When I was a child, books were my friends. Nancy Drew was my hero. She was such a badass. I wanted to be just like her when I grew up. And I wanted to write, so I started at an early age. When I was about 13, my parents divorced, and things got a little bit tough. If I wanted anything, I had to earn it. So when I was in high school, I worked 3 jobs, continued to write, and also got on the high school yearbook and newspaper. It was while I was on the yearbook that one of our assignments was to sell ads to help support the yearbook at Westside. So I came up with a strategy: sell it to the Marines. One of my jobs was up at the mall that was near the Marine Corps recruiting office, and they always came up to our school to talk to the students. So I thought I would stop by after school one day and on my way up to work and sell them. So I headed up there one day, and as I came into their office, I saw these 2 Marines. They had on shiny black shoes and brass buttons that shone like little lanterns, and there was not a wrinkle in sight. I was very impressed by those uniforms. So I started to approach them, and I saw one of the Marines lean over to the other one and say, "I'll take this," like he was talking to a used car manager, taking the sale, you know. And so he approached me, and he said, "What brings you here today?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to talk to you about buying an ad in the yearbook." And he immediately said, "I'll take the largest one." Sold. And then he said, "What are you going to do after high school?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to be a writer, a journalist, but I'm going to see the world first before I go to school." And then he said, "Well, did you know that in the Marine Corps, you can actually write? We have a military occupational specialty, or MOS, called Public Affairs, and you can write and get paid to do it, even while you're on active duty, and go to all these cool places," and, well, at least that's how I heard it. So I can do the writing that I've always dreamed of and get paid to do it and go cool places. Wow, the Marines! Guess who else got sold that day? So the day after I turned 17, the recruiter came to our house, and he had to ask my mother to sign the enlistment papers, which she did. She thought everything I did was wonderful. No questions asked. So in January, I graduated early, and on February 20th of that year, I packed up to go to the swamps of Parris Island, South Carolina, to boot camp in the only place that still makes women Marines today. I made it through boot camp, but the only writing that I was able to do was writing letters home. My Marine Corps recruiter had told me that there was no guarantee that I would get public affairs. So when I got my orders towards the end of boot camp, and I saw the words communication electronics, I was shocked. The school was in 29 Palms, California, in the middle of a lovely desert, a beach in the middle of the Mojave. I graduated second in my class after 3 months of marching in the blazing sun and raking lots of sand. The Marines like lots of nice, neat lines in the sand. So I arrived at Camp Lejeune, which was my duty station, and I was the only female in the unit for 2 years. The Marines in my unit were very respectful, and they treated me like a sister when we were off duty. Things were going very well, and I got the rank of Lance Corporal, and with more hard work, I went on and picked up Corporal. I thought I was doing pretty good for 2.5 years in. And then, We got a new staff sergeant, and things changed. He had heard that I liked to run at lunchtime. I had a 3-mile run that I usually ran, and he said, "Tomorrow we're going to take the platoon on your run." I said, "Okay." Little did I know he was setting me up. So the next day we headed out on my run, and there was a Marine calling cadence, and we were less than halfway through the run, and he turned the whole unit around. I didn't know what was going on, so I continued my run. And then I heard this mouth breather coming up behind me. So I turned around and I see this junior Marine a few paces back. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Staff Sergeant says I should keep an eye on you, make sure you're okay." I said, "Of course I'm okay. I run this every day." I was shocked and I was hurt. And I knew from that point on that my immediate leadership did not have my back. 3 years into my 4-year enlistment came the time that I was sexually assaulted by another Marine. I couldn't believe it was happening. I thought about all the things that I had done, the fact that I was looking at re-enlistment, which was probably now gone, all the hard work that I had put in, and I just didn't know what was going to happen next. I confided in 2 Marines that were real good friends of mine, 2 male Marines, and we decided that I could not tell anybody because my immediate supervisor did not have my back. The only way to explain it to you is that military sexual trauma is like telling your father that your brother raped you. The betrayal can be as bad or worse than the assault itself. It's very personal. So I stuffed it for 30 years. On the outside, things looked okay, productive. I earned degrees, I ran marathons, I jumped out of airplanes, but inside things were different. I lived through 13 years of domestic violence, which I still believe today had to do with not dealing with a sexual assault in the first place. I raised 2 boys who were with me when that relationship crumbled, and I got to be their mother and father and get them through that. The only thing I had at that point was staying extremely busy and my writing, filling lots of notebooks with writing when I had no one else to communicate with. I didn't know then that what I had was PTSD. So I healed by working with other veterans. One of my sons is also a Marine, and he was in Iraq in 2006. His unit lost 11 killed in action and many more wounded. The VA has now declared my son 100% disabled, and he's never going to be quite the same. Anybody that's been to war will never be quite the same. You're always going to have some kind of effect from it, some kind of feeling. So I went on to work with the veterans as a peer support specialist at the VA hospital. And I worked with the social worker. We would do something that we called a warm handoff. I would call her, and I would say, "I've got a veteran, I'm coming up." And she would meet me at the front door and take over from there. One day she called me. It was July 3rd, 2012, and she said, "When are you coming in for yourself?" I had never said a word to her. I don't know how she knew, she just did. So I came up to her office that afternoon, and we talked, and I threw up for 10 minutes straight, and then we did 13 weeks of exposure therapy. It helped, and I continued to write. At that point, I was contacted by the Wounded Warrior Project as my son's caregiver. they sent me an email that surprised me. It said, "Come do some writing up in New York City with the Writers Guild Initiative. Come write with other veterans and caregivers, other mothers, wives, sisters, and girlfriends. Just spend 3 days." So I went to New York City, and we all met, and we were kind of shy at first, but then we started to bond. And as we bonded, the writing came, along with the laughter and the tears. There was a lot of healing that took place, and it took a lot of courage to get that stuff out, but it was very validating. So at the end of the 3 days, I went home, and I thought about what had happened, and I thought I would love to have something like this back here. And I kept writing. And then I was contacted by someone at the Lincoln VA, and they said, "How would you like to go to a writers group? Humanities Nebraska is putting one together." I said, "Yeah, I'm in." So we started a writing workshop in 2014 that is now expanded to Omaha and Grand Island. We call ourselves Nebraska Warrior Writers, and we're still together today. The Writers Guild Initiative and the Nebraska Warrior Writers groups do some amazing work. We also, with the Writers Guild Initiative, have put together a virtual writing group that pulls together veterans from across the country. It's been very healing. In 2015, I was asked to go back east with the Writers Guild because Alfred Woodard was going to read one of my pieces about resilience. Through the generosity of friends and family, I was able to go hear my words spoken by the kindest, most generous person. She breathed life into my words. We kept writing. And then, towards the end of the year, we got the opportunity to do some writing in the new veterans block of the Douglas County Jail here in Omaha. I was so excited. We started right before Thanksgiving with 7 veterans. I met with them and I said, "Let's just do some writing when you feel like you're ready for it." I gave them each a few sheets of paper, and they had their flimsy little jail pens. I don't know if you guys have ever seen anything like it. It looks like the middle of a big pen. Very hard to write with anything like that. And I said, "Just write something. You can do a poem or a song, or you can even draw a picture." I gave them a choice in a place where they had very few choices, but a lot of time. I came back the following Monday, and what I saw blew me away. Every one of them had written something, and one of them had written 27 pages. He had written on the front and the back. He had written on the pages that the other guys didn't use. He had written on the back of the kites, which are the pages that they use to ask for something when they're in jail, and anything else that he could find, pretty much. What they had done was do some healing through that writing. It was their therapy. So we continued. And then at one point, I asked an Army captain to come in. He'd been to Afghanistan and Iraq, and Ben was no slouch. I knew that he would bond with them and they with him. So he came in and he brought in stories from Tim O'Brien and Phil Cly and other war writers. And they did. They began to write and share stories and bond. And a lot of healing took place there. It was very good for all of them. Then, towards the end of the year, I was asked by the Writers Guild Initiative to do some keynote speaking at their gala. The theme was change, the stories of transformation from the workshops of the Writers Guild. What did I say? I said to them, I write because I can't keep it in. I also write, we write, because the world needs to bear witness to what we've seen and where we've been as veterans. There are veterans and caregivers who are struggling with the unseen wounds of war and other traumas. Some of them are suffering with the pain and the shame of the things that they've seen and done, and the fact that there are people who don't want to hear about it and don't want to see any of that. Is it any wonder that we have at least 20 suicides a day in our veteran population? We veterans lead the way in showing others how to heal. We, all of us, all of you sitting out there, are veterans of something, some trauma. You know, Maya Angelou once said, there is no greater agony than an untold story inside of you. So go ahead, pick up a pen. Thank you.